Good morning. I'm Gordon Smith, the state's director of opioid response, and I want to welcome you to our monthly webinar for the governor's opioid response webinar series. Today, we're talking about connecting communities of recovery inside and outside of Maine's correctional facilities. And we have two wonderful faculty members, Bruce Noddin, who we also had with us last month. Welcome back, Bruce. And he's joined by Department of Corrections Commissioner Randall Liberty. And thank you, Commissioner, for taking the time. They are in coats and ties today. I'm in my storm center outfit and hope you're all staying safe. It's still snowing quite hard on the beautiful shores of Lake Cobbossee County in Manchester or East Winthrop. So thanks for joining us. You know, many of you join us almost every month. We will take some questions at the end, and any questions that we don't have the time to respond to, then we will put in writing, and we record all the sessions that are available to the public on the AdCare website. I'm going to talk a bit about the announcement last week of the Attorney General's settling of the cases and the agreements with the towns and cities and school boards, just because I know you're all really interested in it. It is $130 million. It's a game changer, so to speak. And then I'll introduce more formally the commissioner and Bruce Noddin. So the case had been settled back in August, and this was a case against the three major distributors of opioids, not manufacturers, and one manufacturer, Johnson & Johnson. And they're very complicated cases. There were over 3,000 individual cases consolidated in the Federal District Court of Northern Ohio. And so this is really the most money of any of the other cases for now. We'll still have the Purdue bankruptcy has not been fully resolved. There's cases against pharmacy chains, but this will produce revenue into the state of Maine for the next 18 years. And what was negotiated was who gets what and who gets to make the decisions on how it's spent. The good news to me is that all of it has to be spent on opioid abatement. And there's a national, at the national level, there is a 15-page opioid abatement strategy document that contains all the things that you can spend the money on. And fortunately, there's nothing in the governor's strategic plan that isn't encompassed in those 15 pages. It reads a lot like our strategic plan: harm reduction, recovery support, treatment, prevention, all those things. So it's $130 million. The breakdown ended up being that 30% will go to the towns and cities and that litigated, and some towns of over 10,000 population that didn't litigate will still get checks. So 30% of what comes in and there'll be a check each year over 18 years. The 20% will come directly to the state and will come through the Attorney General's office. None of this goes into the state's general fund. So 30% will be given to the towns and cities, 20% to the state, and then 50% is in a common fund that we call the Maine Recovery Fund, that funds projects that will be presented to us in those areas that I mentioned. And those, and there's an 11-member advisory council that gets to make those decisions. That could grow to 15 people if the legislature chooses to add 4 more people to it, which they can do. They don't have to be legislators. The legislature will have to work out, perhaps through LD 1722, how they wish to do that. But the governor has 2 appointments. The Attorney General has 3, including has to be a person with lived experience, has to be an affected family member, then a policy expert. The towns and cities get 2 people. And then all those people get to really decide which projects to fund. So that's it in a nutshell. I think the Attorney General, particularly the Assistant Attorney Generals in his office, Brendan O'Neill and Linda Conti, did just a terrific job. They worked on this case for years, and it was not easy to negotiate these arrangements with even with the attorneys for our own towns and cities and counties. If I didn't mention, all 16 counties will get a check as well. So in addition to the ARPA money that now the counties and the cities are talking about how they spend that money, and we want to make sure that some of that gets into substance use treatment and prevention, we'll have these additional 130 million. If you do the math, 18 years, 30%, 20%, 50%, it's not tens of millions of dollars. It's not the kind of revenue flow we had from the tobacco settlements that was billions and billions of dollars. But $26 billion, even spread amongst all of us, it's probably for us another $4 or $5 million a year that can be dedicated to treatment and prevention and harm reduction and recovery support. So that's all I'll say about it. All the documents, by the way, are on the Attorney General's website. They're not difficult to find. They're lengthy, but you can also get to that opioid strategy document if you want to see how that's all laid out. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Bruce, who I introduced last time, and then I'll introduce Commissioner as well, and then they will take it from here. Bruce, as many of you know, is the founder, I think in 2017, of the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network, and there's also serves as their executive director. And Bruce is lives in the Lewiston area, and has just done a terrific job with the network, and many of you have come into contact with it. I'll leave it to him to tell you more about it, but also he's going to really be talking about the $750,000 grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance and how that's going to be utilized working with the partner, which is the Department of Corrections. So we really appreciate the commissioner being with us. Commissioner Liberty started this work for Governor Mills about the same time that I did, shortly after she was elected. It's quite interesting that not a single commissioner has left us after. This is the week that's completing my third year, and probably pretty close to yours, Commissioner. But Commissioner Liberty has had many years in law enforcement. He also had a distinguished career in the military. And when he was appointed by Governor Mills early in 2019, he had been serving at that time as the warden of the Maine State Prison. So at that time, he said he was going to take the department in a new direction. I really think he has, and he'll talk about that. He had previously served as a deputy sheriff and in a number of different roles over 26 years, including 9 years ending up in Kennebec County as the sheriff. His distinguished career in our nation's military included service overseas in Korea, Italy, and Iraq. He's a graduate of the FBI National Academy and the University of Maine, Augusta, and has a master's degree in leadership and management from Liberty College, might be Liberty University probably. So again, he's a great partner in our work. I enjoy working with him, and I'm going to turn you over to Bruce and Commissioner Liberty. Commissioner Liberty.
You're on mute, Bruce.
Bruce, you're on mute. Yeah. Can you get off mute? Yeah, you were off for a minute.
Can you hear me now?
You're good to go. Good to go.
Okay, so thank you. I was just saying it's a great honor to be in the same room with Randy and with Gordon and Randy in particular, because really Randy was the one who made it possible for MPRN to really flourish and become the organization that it is today. And I'm really excited today to talk about some of the work that we will be doing with the Department of Corrections. And again, thank you for having us here, Gordon. I want to talk a little bit about Maine Prisoner Reentry Network to start with, because I think a lot of people don't exactly know who we are and what we do. We do a lot of different things, and I think it's important to point out that up until about 2 years ago, we were a volunteer-only organization. And so we'll just jump right in. Who is MPRN? And I really like to say that it's all of us, it's all of you that are here today. You know, whether you are directly participating in recovery support or reentry support, we kind of joke that if you show up to an MPRN meeting, that you are automatically, part of the network. And unless you tell us that you don't want to be. So really, we feel like the entire community is part of this network and can play a role in a person's reentry and their recovery planning. So what is MPRN? So where we started was with local meetings in communities. And now we have a statewide convening. And as you can see there, it says a vast network of active community partners connected through statewide and local community meetings. At the end, the last slide will contain a link so that you can join our statewide convening, which to me is kind of the highlight of the week. So it's every Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning. And it's literally statewide. So folks from Aroostook County to York County join us. And we talk about mostly, the work that we do around recovery and reentry. So we'll have district attorneys and folks from sheriff's offices and people in recovery. We actually have folks that join us from 3 of DOC's prisons. So the Women's Reentry Center, Maine State Prison, and Mountain View. So we kind of get the views of all people. And really, we believe that all parts of the community can be a part of helping people with successful reentry and recovery. The other one is we do a training called Ready for Reentry, and it's a peer reentry support training that we've done 3, and we're expecting to do another this spring. Rose's Room, which is a support group for family and loved ones of folks who are incarcerated, and I'm one of those. And these next 2 things, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, the Reentry Maine, which is a engaged release planning for and peer support for folks, and then the Kennebec peer support pilot. So a lot of folks have been asking us about this $750,000 grant that we received, and thinking that it's going to. A lot of people have said, "Hey, Bruce, congratulations on the $750,000." So I want to just make clear that it isn't going to me. And also, it isn't going to all of the programs that MPRN does. It's for a specific program that we propose to BJA and the Second Chance Act application. So it is a $750,000 grant over 3 years. And one of my favorite things is that it formalizes our relationship between MPRN and the Department of Corrections. As I said, it's a specific program designed to expand and enhance what MPRN already does. And I'll kind of get into that a little bit, and you'll kind of get an idea of what we've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. Focusing on Maine State Prison and medium to high risk folks at the prison, and also long-term stayers. And the idea is to make contact with folks at a minimum of 9 months prior to release, which is something that we're already doing in coordination with caseworkers within the prisons. So it may take place prior to that, but at a minimum, we'll make that contact at 9 months prior to release. We'll have 3 regional reentry peer support specialists who have lived experience. They will meet with people inside, and they will also continue to support people once they are released. Focusing on person-centered planning. So we kind of stress to the folks that we talk to that this is not our plan. It isn't the caseworker's plan. It isn't mom and dad's plan or brothers and sisters. It's their plan. And we try to kind of delve into and explore kind of what they would like to do, maybe some of the dreams that they've had, thoughts about the future, and try to support that, and then invite community resources to join these meetings, understanding that these are all Zoom meetings that we're having with folks. So it doesn't matter what part of the state that they're heading to. We can get and help them connect with people in those communities. And that's what the importance of the statewide convening and also the meetings that we have around the state, is that we built these relationships and we can invite people to come to the meetings. What we're selling is self-empowerment. A lot of these folks don't really think that they have the opportunities that are available to them. And really their dreams are kind of in a little box. And we try to expand that and let them know that they do have the power to do this and to build a life. Post-release, as I already kind of mentioned, these folks will be on the ground and helping to maintain that plan that was put in place. Continued support for at least 1 year post-release. And then data, which is a really important thing. I have to be very honest. MPRN has never really had the ability to track the folks that we've been assisting. So there'll be check-ins at 1, 2, and 3 years. And before I end this part of it, I just want to thank the Department of Corrections, specifically Dave Simpson and Chris Arbor. They helped us to kind of focus in the early parts of the application process, which if anybody knows anything about these federal grants, our grant application was nearly 170 pages long. So we needed a lot of help. The next thing I want to talk about is our peer support pilot. And we have this little blurb on our website that says that we exist to reduce the rate of recidivism measurably in the state of Maine. And we had this conversation about, well, if we're just as concerned about reducing recidivism, shouldn't we be just as concerned and concentrated on trying to keep people out of the system entirely in the first place? So we developed the Kennebec County Peer Support Pilot, which we're so thankful to the Office of Behavioral Health that they funded this project for a little over a year now. And it's a 2-year project that will end at the end of September. And, we're, as an organization, we're all about community collaboration and trying to involve as many organizations as possible. So when we first started having this discussion, I met with Elizabeth Simone from Maine Pretrial Services and then District Attorney Megan Maloney. And they thought that a great place to start was with the Co-occurring Disorders Court. I don't like the word disorder, so I'll continue to call it CODC, and Veterans Court. And then we invited, we had a conversation with Sheriff Ken Mason, folks at Maine General, Healthy Acadia, the Link Center, and talked about how we could work together to support people that are in these recovery courts. So we extend peer support and recovery coaching for the idea is to extend peer support and recovery coaching to justice-involved people in Kennebec County. The first step was in CODC in the Veterans Court and providing coaching and peer support to court participants before they enter the court, during that time in the court, and hopefully, and in some cases we have after they commence or graduate from the court, and even after termination from the court. So we do have the luxury of being able to maintain contact with people in the prison because Randy and his folks have given us great access to the prison, so we can continue to support those folks. All of them, all these folks are CCAR trained and certified intentional peer support trained. And they have lived experience. Most of them, all of them have lived experience of recovery. Most of them have lived experience of incarceration. So the 3,650 plus 3 is the number of recovery coaches we had in the first year. And we noticed that we needed more. So we shifted some of our funding to paying 3 more recovery coaches. And thanks to Healthy Acadia and the Recovery Corps program, we're able to have those folks on board. And the 50 plus is the number of folks that we've supported in the courts, and also folks that are pretrial, and also folks that we've made contact with in a peer support sense and a recovery coach sense in the jail. I'm really proud of Thursday Night Thunder, and it's not Thunder, it's Thunder, named by a gentleman, unfortunately, who was part of the court who recently passed away. But it's an incredible support meeting that started out for CODC and Veterans Court, and is now kind of moved into being and I'm at the Augusta Recovery and Reentry Center right now. That's where the meeting is held, and it's become a really important meeting for this community, and a meeting for me as a person in long-term recovery that people are more open in this meeting than any meeting that I've really ever been to. Not part of the funding from OBH, but a very important part of what we do, thanks to funding from Raleigh, Maine, is we provide smartphones and data cards to folks that cannot afford it that are in the court. And I really enjoy and appreciate the connection that we have with the court team. And we kind of bring a recovery voice to the court team meetings. The next phase is contact with individuals entering the jail within 48 hours of entering. So the idea would be to provide recovery supports, peer support, and connection to community resources for folks seeking recovery and folks who are actively using. So connecting them with harm reduction resources, which are very nearby to the jail with Maine General, and certainly within walking distance, and also recovery supports that are available, and us, so recovery coaching and being able to come here to the Augusta Recovery and Reentry Center, just making those connections. And like I said it here in this slide, letting them know that there are people out there that care within the community. So there have been barriers. One of the major barriers is obviously COVID-19 to this phase of the project. But we're hoping for things to change there so we can actually get into the jail. And much of this project came about because we really, to our core, believe that reentry and recovery is a community responsibility, that we invest in these folks, mostly young people, because we really need these folks in our community and also parts of our family. And that it takes virtually every part of the community, whether it's workforce development, recreation, people kind of forget about that part, that all of these little pieces can be a part of somebody's recovery and somebody's successful reentry from jail and prison. Put my email here and the link to the statewide convening. And the last thing I want to say, and I'm just showing you this picture because this is from one of our trainings that we did about 3.5 years ago. And Randy Liberty was our guest speaker. At the time, he had just become the commissioner. And he took a picture here with my friend Darren and Seth, friends Darren and Seth, and they had both been in prison for a period of time, and they couldn't wait to get their picture taken with Randy. And I think it's also a very important time for me to again say that Randy is the one who made it possible for us to do this, because I walked into his office when he was the warden, and I said, what do you think of this idea of us, folks with lived experience, except for me, but most of the people I worked with, just coming in and talking to people about what it's going to be like when they re-enter the community, supporting them and making connections to resources. And he threw his hands up in the air and he said, come on in. And that's been the journey for us with DOC and with Randy. So with that, I'll pass it off to Randy. Thank you very much for having me. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for those kind words. It's certainly a team effort, and we very much value your commitment to reentry. You're making a big difference in the lives of many people. It's good to be here today. This is a very, very important topic, and one that I've been engaged in for, almost 4 decades now. I come from a multi-generational addicted family, and I had a parent that was addicted for many years, resulting in his incarceration, and frequent incarceration, I should say. And I also have 2 nephews that are addicted to heroin, one that's currently in my care and has been in my care a couple of times. And so this is important to me. I can think of no more important topic to talk about or to bring resources to bear to really work for the betterment of our community. So I would say that, I began my career again about 40 years ago, and I've done many different angles for this work. I have educated youth in schools, talking about drug addiction and prevention. I have done an awful lot of law enforcement, drug enforcement. I did a couple decades of that, where I thought the solution to addiction was executing search warrants and bringing people to jail. And that may be part of the solution, but certainly is not the significant portion that will bring people to recovery and make our community safer. I also jumped into the rehabilitation space about 20 years ago, I guess, when I was sheriff of Kennebec County, and my team there, we created the CARE program, the Criminogenic Addiction Recovery Academy, in which any incarcerated Mainer that's at the county level can participate and look at the criminogenic needs, do some assessments, do some reflection, talk about addiction, and give them some tools prior to release. And we've had some success with that, and that continues today. And so we're excited to be able to support that in any way that we can. I tried to continue this work when we went to the Maine State Prison, and we continue this work today as commissioner. I have a fantastic team. Most of my efforts, the architect of our efforts, Dr. Ryan Thornell, is fantastic to work with, and has done tremendous work as it relates to medications for substance use disorder and implementing this. The important piece here for me to relay to you is you need to realize, I know you do, but our populations in the prison system and in the jails are very reflective of our society. And any of the struggles that are occurring on the outside occur on the inside. And a number that's important to talk about really is that 76% of the people that are incarcerated in Maine, in the Maine Department of Corrections, and I'm sure the data is very similar, need substance use disorder treatment, 76%. And 39% of those are needing treatment for opioid use disorder. And so the opioids need to be addressed there in our correctional facilities if we're ever going to have any sort of success. When we're talking about the death rates, the very unfortunate record numbers that have occurred over the last couple of years, 237 that occurred in 2020, and the very unfortunate number of 636 that we just received the data on that passed in Maine due to addiction. That 47% of the people that had passed in 2020, 47% of them had contact with the Maine Department of Corrections. And so it seems very, very obvious to all of us that this is an area of emphasis where we really need to work with a sense of urgency. People being released are dying, and we need to do everything we can to address their needs. And when I say that in the Maine Department of Corrections, we release about 900 individuals annually. Last year, we released 787 males and 90 females back into the community. And the question really becomes of, have we given them every tool that they need to be successful in the community? Have we identified upon their arrival, done the assessments, work with them collaboratively to address these needs and give them the tools to be successful in the community? And we know that when we address the needs of people that are incarcerated, we certainly address the needs of multi-generations. Those that are incarcerated, their parents are often watching the children. And not only do we help the people that are in our care, but also their parents and also their children. And we know that addiction, as with mental health and incarceration, is a family affair, and everyone is impacted. And I think most of us have someone that we know personally in our families or that we're close to that have been impacted by addiction, and critically important that we address that. And Bruce and I talk about, when we were younger men, we agreed that, if we were in positions of authority or we had some influence, things would be different. And Bruce and I are here now, and we're trying to make a difference in the work that we do every day. And it is nothing more important than working with the addicted and helping all of those. As I said, about 900 released from state custody annually. The real numbers at the county. As I mentioned, I was sheriff of Kennebec County. I assisted in managing that facility for about 14 years. And although we had 165 beds, there were years where we released 3,200 people. 3,200 people released from one jail. Collectively, in 2020, the jails released 21,000 Mainers back into the community. 21,000 Mainers back into the community. And due to COVID, the numbers were lower last year. In 2021, they released about 16,000 residents. So there's an opportunity. If we know that 3/4 of those individuals have some type of addiction, we can really get to work and assisting them in their transition back in a safer way and more healthy way. There are challenges working, managing a county jail, and those challenges very often are funding, very difficult because it's property tax based and they struggle for funding very often. In the most recent years, and certainly during COVID, it's been very difficult both at the state level and at the county level for staffing. And so that becomes problematic, and residents get locked in far too often at both levels because we just don't have the staffing that we need. And often with the county jails, depending on their size and their resources, they just don't have the medical providers and the clinicians that they often need to provide the resources that they wish to provide. But again, it's a challenge. And I talk to the sheriffs very, very frequently. They understand the need. They're passionate about addiction. They recognize that if we invest in people while they're addicted, they may not come back. If we're spending $44,000 to $47,000 annually to house someone in a correctional facility, it makes no sense not to treat and rehabilitate and release them better off than when they arrived. And so the sheriffs get that. I understand that, and we're working that every day. It's a transition, though. It will take time, and they're working hard with us and with Gordon to make that a priority. Obviously, Governor Mills believes this is a very important topic and effort. And the second executive order that she issued in 2019 was to establish the opioid response statewide. And I've been part of that. Myself and Dr. Randall and I've been managing that. And I'll explain to you what exactly we've done, what kind of progress we've made, and how many we've been able to assist on that journey. The response, MDOC's opioid response in 2022, I'm pleased to say that the residents in our care have broad access to medication for substance use disorder. More than 400 adult residents are actively participating in receiving medications to assist their addiction in our facilities, so 400. And we have more than 675 residents have been released to the community having received that treatment. So we've been able to provide that service for 675 that have been over the last 2 years, been released back into the community with medication assisted treatment. One of the keys for our success clearly is about continuity of care. And one of the major factors to provide continuity of care for the residents was the Maine care expansion. And that has allowed individuals being released into the community have that coverage immediately. And one of the things we got to work on fairly quickly, it was very important that we recognized that if treatment is provided at the jails and there's a smooth continuity of care into the prison system, there has to be a smooth handoff to the community providers. If there's a break in that service, break in coverage, break in Maine care, that individual is at a significantly higher risk than they would be if they had good continuity of care and good treatment. So when they arrive at the Maine State Prison or any other facilities, they're enrolled in Maine Care, and it's reactivated. It's kind of in a holding pattern, and when they're released, they're immediately eligible to receive that treatment, and those providers to be reimbursed. And so that was important. We've been partnering primarily with Groups Recover Together, and initially a challenge with that organization, as with the many providers, is to ensure that wherever those residents left, wherever they were going to transition to, we had to have good access to a provider, and it was important for them to expand, and they did. We have good coverage now, and we've had a pretty good we've had good luck in smooth handoff with Mprn, with the ability for Maine Prisoner Reentry Network and for Groups for Recover Together to be able to transition them not only as they go out the door, but months prior to build that relationship to ensure that we have treatment when they're released. One of the challenges for me to ensure that it was very important to sort of reset the culture of the Maine Department of Corrections. And we do that, and it's called the Maine Model of Corrections, where we're really focusing on humanizing individuals, destigmatizing incarceration, and realizing that wellness and providing a culture of wellness in our facilities is critically important to address the core issues. We know that people arrive in our care, in the criminal justice system because of mental health, substance use disorder, trauma, poverty, neglect. All of those things sort of make up the bulk of my residents. And we feel it's very important that when we talk about incarcerated minors, that language does matter. And you'll notice as I speak, I talk about residents, and I don't talk about offenders or inmates. It's not my job to punish. My job is to identify what brought them to my care, provide public safety through programming, and to ensure that individuals, when they're released back into the community, they're in better shape than when they arrived. And in doing that, we reduce victimization, and it becomes very important for us as we train our staff to very early on, an officer recognizes that your job is not to provide punishment to these individuals in your care, but to reduce harm through supportive intervention. And we empower change, and we restore lives. And again, it impacts multi-generations. And regardless of who I speak with, regardless what your political affiliation or whatever your fiscal expenditure focus is, it makes no fiscal sense not to provide rehabilitative therapeutic environment. And when you're paying such $46,000 a year to house someone, and then they reoffend. And so everyone wins, I think, when we provide this level of treatment. And that's just not with addiction, but we're talking about education. We have graduated more than 100 individuals with a college degree. And very important that you recognize that individuals that attend University of Maine at Augusta, Colby College, MIT, Horace Mann, all of those educational institutions, my residents are currently engaged in those. And we know that if they receive a college degree in the Maine Department of Corrections upon release, there's only a 5% recidivism rate, as opposed to a national rate of 65 to 75%, depending where they're released from. So it's very important for us to humanize and recognize these are fellow Mainers. Very, very important for us to recognize that and provide the therapy and treatment that they need to recover. To kind of give you an idea of just exactly where we are for timeframes in 2001, because earlier on in 2019 and 20, we had a few pilots at the Maine Department of Corrections where we introduced the medication for substance use disorder, and we piloted to try to figure this out and do it successfully, learn from our challenges, bring the residents in, bring the officers, bring the clinicians in, do some good after action reviews to try to improve our process. And 2021 is really where we indicated that we were going to do universal medication for addiction. And so on February 15th, we opened eligibility to everyone that was within 1 year of release, their release date, 1 year within release date. We did that for a while. In May, we opened eligibility to individuals that were 2 years prior to release. So it's just not this 30 days prior to release and we start them on the medications. We did First 1 year in February. May, we did it 2 years out. And then August 1st, we opened eligibility to any resident that was appropriate for the treatment, regardless of sentence length. So they arrive. We do assessments if they're prescribed and they're on the medication, they continue that. If they're unprescribed and they go through the screening process, they and their clinician believe that they have a substance use disorder, they can get on the medication at that point. And now throughout their sentence, regardless of the length of the sentence, reducing those cravings and treating that medication as it is, recognizing that medications for substance use disorder is the gold standard to reduce cravings and to address addiction, and allowing them to focus, just like on the street, allowing them to focus on doing a good time in addressing rehabilitation, addressing, working inside the facilities, addressing any trauma needs they may have or educational needs, without the need to try to find some way to satisfy that need. The active participants for medication for substance use disorder in the Maine Department of Corrections, prior to the expansion prior to 2021, we had around 200 that were consistently taking advantage of this program throughout our system in all of our facilities. Currently, we have 400 that are taking medications for substance use disorder, and we anticipate that to grow to 600, and we're approaching that very quickly as we speak. It's important that prior to them receiving this treatment, that they have a review of the medications that are available to them, that they have a consultation with medical staff so they are aware of what's going on, and that prior to release, they have Narcan available to them. And we're in the process of continuing to improve all of that. The medication that is available to them is Subutex, Suboxone, Subucate, Naltrexone, Vivitrol, and the rates in which those are given are primarily Suboxone at this point. About 95% of our residents are on Suboxone and find that to be the best circumstance for them. We also have, I see in the chat, there's some discussion about methadone, and at any given time, we have just a couple on methadone, depending what the methadone is used, depending on the clinician and the resident, what they feel is best medication available to them. There are times we have 1 or 2 that are on Subucate. Some of the injectables have some complications as they're released back into the community and aren't always available to some of the rural areas. And so we work through that with our clinical staff and with a resident to find out just exactly what medication is best for them. We have weekly MAT release planning calls. And in that planning call, we talk about some of the core issues that people are challenged with when they release. We know that anyone, whether they have substance use disorder or not, the challenges really are housing, treatment, which we try to address, the housing we try to address, and vocation. We try to prepare them for work, and so they can have a livable wage for they and their families upon release. And so that's very important that we work on all that. We bring in the medical team, we bring in the caseworkers, we bring in Mprn to help us, the Maine Prisoner Reentry Network, to assist us in that transition. And we also bring in months in advance groups recover together, so that works well. So that's important to do that. And we bring all the stakeholders in to have a smooth transition. Some data discussing the percentage of those individuals that are released into the community with an appointment for MAT. Day one, they have an appointment transitioning back out. It's very important that in 2019, there was 89% had an appointment upon release. In 2020, there was 99% had a appointment upon release. They knew the time and date and location, and they were given transportation there. And in 2021, everyone releasing with substance use disorder at the Maine Department of Corrections had an appointment to have a smooth transition into the community. 68% of the residents that attended attended their first appointment. So 68% continued that programming, and the average retention for treatment as of today is 149 days. So individuals are receiving the treatment inside were able to have in 2021, 100% had an appointment, 68% attended, they had an average stay in treatment of 149. So very important. Also important to know that the peer recovery coaches, very important that happens in the correctional facilities. Very important that we have an active peer recovery team that's providing, they're some of the therapy that occurs as we provide this treatment. So the peer recovery teams are very, very important. And again, very important that I share with my officers, my leadership team, we have unity of vision that we destigmatize incarceration and we destigmatize addiction, recognizing that it's a disease and we have to do what we can to assist that. One of the key areas for myself and Dr. Ryan Thornell as we embarked on this journey was education for staff, because often, very, very often, in a correctional setting, there can be a culture. And it was important for us to take the time to educate the staff from the very youngest officer to that officer who's been there for quite some time, and the chain of command, the leadership, to educate them as to what addiction is and the fact that it's a disease and what's the gold standard for treating this on the outside and in the inside. And medication assisted treatment is that. And so it took some time to get some champions of this cause, for them to recognize that the importance, to recognize that any programming and treatment that we do inside reduces the likelihood of future victimization and is multi-generational beneficial. And we've really had some really fantastic luck. The staff has been phenomenal in recognizing and normalizing this. And so when we do a pill line for normal medications, to include insulin and other medications that they receive, they now receive Suboxone in the same medication line. So it's just another medication addressing their medical needs, and it's worked very, very well to this point. I'll leave it at that. It's an honor to be engaged in this work. We recognize the Maine Department of Corrections, the significance of and the tragedy of addiction that's occurring in the state of Maine. And we want to be a part of that solution. We want to be a part of giving people an opportunity to be able to recover and redeem and have a therapeutic environment where we have a non-confrontational relationship between the officers and the residents in our care, recognizing that by far most of them will be released into the community. And the question we have to ask ourselves, will they be better citizens, more likely to be productive citizens, fathers, mothers, sisters, sons and daughters, than they were when they arrived? And I hope the answer is today, yes, and will be the same tomorrow. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Bruce. There are a number of questions. I tried to save some to be tossed out orally to both of you. I'm looking for one now that I was particularly interested in. I think I remember the one that I was interested in, talked about, in addition to medication and treatment for the substance use, what is being done to promote health and wellness, tobacco addiction, the more holistic ways that a person can stay healthy in addition to just treating their substance use disorder. So one of you want to take that?
Sure, I'd be glad to grab that. Always an opportunity to grab a mic. It's important for me to create an environment of wellness in the correctional setting. And so when you travel now to any of the correctional facilities in the state of Maine, you'll see an environment where we have yoga. We have, I think we have 19 certified yoga instructors now through the Liberation Institute, where residents are actually teaching other residents to do yoga. We have 6 dog programs where there are dogs that are actually in the facilities. The residents are training them. That makes it more a normative sort of environment. We have a dog and I think we have a total of 50 dogs that are in our facilities now, and they're training them to be service dogs on the outside, giving them the ability to give back. We have a healthy agricultural program where we produced about 150,000 pounds of agriculture in our facilities, more than 70 varieties of vegetables that go from that the residents plant from seed and bring into the kitchen, so they have more nutritious and more healthy and ability to for dining, and those sorts of environments with education. We now have one of our residents has the ability to, from the Maine State Prison, to teach a class at Colby College, giving those advantages to integrating with free Mainers. And so we're continually trying to find a way to normalize, increase communication with the outside, with family members, and I think we've had good success at this point.
You want to add anything, Bruce?
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing to bring up because that's kind of what I was talking a little bit about with the planning for reentry, is that it's not just a place to live, food on the table, and a job. If that's what life is, then I don't even want to be part of that. I want to have some fun. I want to have something that I'm passionate about, and I want to be healthy. So those are the kind of things that we build into this reentry plan. And I have to say, we're working with the caseworkers inside of the prison, and they're doing the same thing. So they're setting up, the caseworkers are making sure to set up primary care physician appointments, mental health appointments, obviously medication assisted treatment. They're hitting that 100% right now, which is amazing. And we want to enhance and build upon that, because health isn't just physical health. Health is being, living a vibrant, fulfilling life. And that's what we're hoping for when folks are to build when people are getting out.
I think a similar question comes from our friend Lorraine Brown up in Belfast regarding the benefits of art and music in our facilities. Bruce, I know you know, Lorraine, do you want to, how are we doing in promoting music and art in the facilities?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak to my part. I'm sure Randy can say, sometimes, and Lorraine knows this better than anybody, sometimes the only window into somebody's, and I'll say into their soul, is through art, music, other ways. We've had folks that we've sat across from that they're very flat affect. They really just don't want to listen, even though there's somebody in the room with lived experience. But then we come to find out that they're a writer, or they like to draw, or they like to paint, or they like to play guitar. And then we start having those discussions, and then their eyes kind of open up and the whole body language starts to change. And Lorraine is better than anybody that I know at using this as a channel, as a way to get into that person in a way when there was no other. I thought I said the most profound things that ever came out of my mouth to people, and they just nothing. But then when we started talking about their writing and started talking about their connection to music, then we had a window into moving and progressing. So I love what Lorraine does. And literally the best event that I've ever been to in my life was the What's Art Got to Do With It event that they did, that's going on about 2.5 years ago. And I'm hearing that they're going to do it again. It was amazing. And actually Ryan Thornell spoke to kind of open that up a few years ago. So can't wait to do it again, Lorraine. Thank you for mentioning that.
Bruce, I think we should also do a shout out to the group at the University of Maine Farmington that you introduced me to, because that was all about art, and because everybody understands the terrific work that Jan Collins and the team up there is doing, but the particular people that were doing the art, I would not remember the names of.
Gustavo and Galen, and that's the Tug Collective. And they worked in unison with Lorraine and those folks too, to kind of do the same thing. And it's a great presentation at UMF.
Great. We've got a question that I like. It's from, again, one of our very strong advocates and partners about changing the paradigm, particularly about deflection and diversion. In a way, it's not fair to ask you two gentlemen, perhaps because, I mean, you aren't really in the diversion and deflection business, in my opinion. But I do think it's incredibly important. I've often said that, gee, if people have to be incarcerated, I'd rather have them not incarcerated and be in the treatment and recovery court, or our co-occurring court, or our veterans court, rather than to be incarcerated. But I'd rather not have them even in the criminal justice system at all. And that's where this issue really comes from, is can we do more in deflection and diversion so that people get into treatment and aren't in the criminal justice system at all? We should try, but I would like to ask each of you, just if you have any comment on that. I'm sure, Commissioner Liberty, that you just soon have smaller numbers that coming into your facilities.
As I mentioned in my sort of opening comments, I've been on all sides of this, and I had great involvement in the formation of the Veterans Court that Justice Nancy Mills formed, and was fantastic, and continues to this day. And so, as you mentioned, I'm a veteran, and so to see the powerful work that happens, giving somebody the best case, worst case scenario, and having them navigate therapy, treatment, and having better outcomes than incarcerating, I'm all for that. That makes great sense. And so when we have those individuals that are addicted and are charged with possession, the challenge for the law enforcement community is when you have larger amounts, you have a trafficker or somebody that's in the business, that becomes the challenging part for the law enforcement community to say, he has 300 doses on him, scales, a ledger. What do you do with that individual? Not the possessor, not the addicted, but the individual that's actually participating in the trafficking in the amounts, transporting out of state. That's the challenging part. The addicted is the obvious choice to divert and find programmatic. We do the same thing in probation, right? Our probation officers 25 years ago were going in someone's home, doing a probation check, finding a beer, and they go to jail. Those days are gone. We recognize that addiction, that relapse is part of addiction, and that we do an awful lot of graduated sanctions, being more informed and directing people toward more programming and treatment than the punitive actions of sending them back to jail.
Bruce?
Yeah, so many things to talk about here. One is district attorneys. So the beauty of working with a district attorney like Megan Maloney or Jonathan Sarback is that these folks are doing the best that they can to get people into treatment or other alternatives, drug courts, diversion, working with Maine pretrial. So there's that piece of it. The other part of it is the peer support pilot that I talked about, with that part of contacting people when they enter jail within 48 hours of entering. The idea of that, maybe I didn't convey that as well as I should have. The idea of that is to make contact with that person and let them know that there are alternatives. And if they're going to be released, which most of these folks will be released in a very, very short time, that they don't come back. That if we introduce them to the resources that are in the community, whether they are in active use or not, that the chances are that they're not going to come back because they have a supportive either people or a supportive community around them. So that, there's a lot, and obviously laws. There's some legislation that's being proposed right now about the Good Sam law and about amounts and about decriminalization and all of those things. I'm not going to get controversial here, but it's all parts. And I look at a gentleman like Randy. Randy's the receiver of all this. The department takes these people in. They don't make the laws. They don't convict folks. So they have to take what they get. And one of the first things Randy ever said to me when I walked into his office and when he was a warden was that he said, I'd kind of like to be out of a job. So if the system isn't feeding these people into jail and prison, then we as a community can step up. But there's a whole lot more that we have to build. And I know, Gordon, you've been trying to do that to support people in detox and rehab and other things in order for them not to end up in that warehouse of mental health and substance use.
Thank you, Bruce. We've got a couple great other questions, but we're out of time. But I remind you, we will answer all these questions in writing. Some of you I know, one of our champions, Paul Vinsel, asked a question about, the normalization of the distribution of Suboxone, whether you find it's leading to more diversion. And as I understand, the prison system, it really hasn't, but in the jails, we do get a lot of comment about that from the sheriff. So we'll pour over these questions. We'll answer them in writing over the weekend. And again, I really want to first thank Commissioner Liberty and Bruce Noddin for their participation this morning. It's been a great discussion. Been a lot of comments in the chat, a lot of questions. And I remind all of our audience that we had over 360 people register this morning. We've had a couple hundred people with us today. We really appreciate you joining in. Our next webinar in the Governor's Series that will continue right up until the Governor's Summit on July 11th in Bangor is on March 4th, and we're going to tackle the subject of the intersection between acquired brain injury and substance use disorder. A fascinating subject. We've been working on it since 2019, but it really did get slowed down with COVID. The evidence is that people with an acquired brain injury are more susceptible to developing a substance use disorder, and also people who have overdosed, who are without oxygen for long periods of time, frequently may acquire a brain injury as a result, and it's not always immediately apparent. It may show up weeks, days, weeks, months later. So we have an expert panel March 4th to talk with us about that issue. So stay safe today in the storm. And again, thanks Bruce and Randy and AdCare and all our many wonderful partners. They're great to work with.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Well done, sir.
All right, good job, Bruce.
Good job, Randy. Thank you.
Enjoy your weekends.
Thank you,
As
guys.
well.
Good to see you. Appreciate it.
Great job. Take care.
Do we get the chat too, Lorena?
Yes, so what I will do, when I get the recording, I'll get a copy of the chat and the questions. I'll work with Gordon to re-answer the questions again and type it up. Chances are he'll send to you for some of your input. And then Monday, when I send out the certificate and the evaluation, I'll send out a link to where we post the recording, and I will send out a copy of the chat and answer the questions and stuff. So yes, they will get that. There was a lot in the chat. I've been getting emails. People want the information that's in the chat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
So-
sorry for me, I just wanted some of the emails of people that
Yeah,
wanted to join Statewide.
Absolutely. And if
Yeah, me
either
too.
of you have any resources that you want me to send out with that email I'm sending out, that you think people might be interested in, let me know. So,
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank
Great
you.
work with you
Guys.
all. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you.
bye-bye.